Hello, everyone. You're listening to Little Saturday Cars Live. How's everyone doing this Saturday? I hope everyone had a good week and is having a good weekend. I am glad and fortunate that you took the time to listen to this podcast where all your relevant car news is under a half an hour. Now, the first summary that I like to go through is the 2020 Porsche Taycan, I think that's how you pronounce it, the 4S first review. Now, if you're well aware, Porsche is trying to make an electric vehicle. Well, they made one, and it's supposed to compete with the Tesla Model S or Model 3. I don't even know anymore what this car is supposed to compete with. But as they learned, meaning automotive enthusiasts, they consider this model as an ideal balance of performance to price in the growing Taycan lineup. So I'm not really aware of Porsche's new lineup and what they're doing. I'm just aware of the Taycan 4S, if that's considered just the electric car itself, and Taycan is just the entire lineup. I'm not sure. I'm just an average Porsche advocate of, for example, the GT3, the 911, the Cayman. Like, I'm aware of those cars, but when you get into nitty-gritty 918 and 917 and all these other generations of vehicles that Porsche has revealed in the past, and you'll probably lose me. But in terms of the physical statute, the Taycan is supposed to be smaller in the exterior and interior dimensions, and when we're talking about these dimensions, we mean comparatively speaking to the Porsche Panamera. And what else? And it's also equipped with a quad, so this is probably a marketing gimmick because it's probably simplified to something even more simple. But with Subaru's dynamic or symmetrical all-wheel drive, it's just all-wheel drive, and they just put like a gimmick in front of it, like a wordy sort of deal. so with the dual liquid cooled, permanently exited synchronous motor. So in general, it's just a synchronous motor, what's usually applied with electric motors, and they're usually liquid. I think they're liquid cooled or air cooled. It depends on the car, but I know Tesla's is liquid cooled, and I know for a fact that there was a YouTube channel now we're into the liquid cooled process of electric motors, that there was this part where it's similar to the Demon, where the coolant that's being used on these cars, there's a part that synchronizes the cooling into a super cooled liquid, and it helps cool the motors. So Porsche is probably using this similar technology on their cars, and not to mention it's fitted with an advanced 800 volt electrical system and the sophisticated, which I don't think it's sophisticated, but however, liquid regulated temperature controlled system for the battery pack, and the Taycan 4S may be charged with a growing network of 270 kilovolt DC fast chargers. So the question is when you implement these fast chargers, does the battery life of your vehicle go down drastically? Now, I think there are some studies out, but not enough data to solidify the fact that if fast chargers are detrimental to your car's battery system. But I think in general, with phones and how long phones have been out, we can implement that same theory into cars, electric cars, but not to get into the nitty-gritty theoretical standpoints of how batteries degrade over time. The simple fact of the matter is if you do fast charging, I think the way it works is the ions get solidified, or some connections within the battery cells get solidified, and it just decreases the efficiency of how much power output the battery can produce over time if you just charge it unnecessarily. And to understand more of this theory, if anyone's interested, Linus Tech Tips, I think his YouTube name is called, he goes into the process of going through studies of what's the most efficient way to charge your phone, and I think he came up with the conclusion that it's better to charge your phone within the percentage range of 60 to 70%. So meaning when your phone is at 60, then charge it and make sure it goes up to 70, then uncharge it, and that's how you can sustain the most efficient battery power as possible. So, I don't know, with this battery technology, it's in the mix of how much knowledge there is, and believe it or not, there's really not a lot of knowledge for this type of technology, because in cars in general, because for this type of industry, there has been a huge dependence on fossil fuels, and a lot of car companies are starting to diverge into new technologies such as electric and hydrogen, for that matter. And hydrogen, I believe it's a horrible idea, but we all have our opinions. However, back to the Taycan. This summary concludes that it's uncertain about what this car is supposed to compete with. Is it supposed to compete with the Model S? They have specified with the cost of it that it's probably not, because for the 2020 Porsche Taycan 4S, the base price is $103,000, which is a lot. And, how many people are going to afford that? The answer is not a lot. Not a lot of people can afford a six-figure car, especially electric vehicle, depending on what your tax incentives are. But what's even more funny, and let's see if Porsche does this with the pricing of their car, in order for Tesla to make so I noticed this on their website, to make it more convincing for their buyers to buy a vehicle, they include the potential gas savings that you're going to have for the car for 1 year if you buy it. So for example, if you buy the Model 3, and let's just say it's $30,000, Tesla on their website will literally add the estimated gas savings for the first year of owning that vehicle. And let's just say hypothetically that you're going to save $5,000 worth of gas. So Tesla estimates that the true value of your vehicle is $25,000, which doesn't make sense because you're already paying $35,000 for the car, and whatever value that would stem from, I don't know, purchasing gas with a regular car doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But if anyone understands it, just clarify with me in the comments or just DM me, my Instagrams. So anyway, on to the next summary. So my first question to you is, when was the last time you saw a Hummer? Right, a while ago. Because there seems to be a huge correlation between gas prices and Hummers. As a result, when gas prices are usually low, the Hummers come out in loads. So, the next time you see gas prices considerably low, I'm not sure where you're living if you're listening to this podcast, but I live in New York, so for example, the gas price that would be considerably low would be around $2.25, $2.50, so a gallon, of course. And so if you recognize these prices, and if you live in this area, then look out for Hummers, because I'm pretty sure you're going to see a swab of them if gas prices are down. But anyhow, Hummer is changing their status quo. But when I say status quo, I mean they're reinventing themselves, and I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's probably a bad thing because GM is involved, and GM's production and how their technology is sort of, I don't know, way behind industry standards, but they're trying. That's that's all that matters. So anyhow, branded as GMC Hummer EV, it would offer 1,000 horsepower and 11,500 foot-pounds of torque. Holy shit. After a decade of absence from the market, GM is set to restructure the Hummer brand, which was brushed under the rug for poor sales, and also during the '08 crisis, they tried to restructure their customer base in a way of trying to make their cars look more, I don't know, more environmentally friendly with fuel flex. I think that was a GM term, and they used it for the Suburbans and Tahoes. And also, let's not forget about that failed venture that they've done with the Tahoe or Suburban by making it a hybrid, which I think the only thing that they did was installed another. This is a funny clarification for anyone who wants to make a hybrid vehicle, because it seems like the only thing you need to do is add another battery on top of the battery that's already in the car. And Subaru, for example, with their Crosstrek, offers a hybrid, but the only thing different from the hybrid and just the regular vehicle is it just has an extra car battery. And this is sort of the minimum industry standard of, I don't know, putting more lines into your vehicle lineup. So there you go. Now back to the Hummer. Now GM has specified that they're investing $2.2 billion to retool the plant, and also announces that it's transitioning this plant in Detroit, which is in Hamtramck. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's an assembly plant, and they're gonna transform it into a plant where they make only EV cars. So GMC has specified that they're taking the brand to new heights, where the Hummer is probably going to push them to another level, which I highly doubt, because this car, I believe it when I see it, but we'll just have to see, because usually vice presidents and CEOs like to give some optimistic traits to their speech, and the people who are listening and eventually have last say in it are the shareholders, the board of directors. And it's pretty odd for someone who is in charge of the company and its operations to be pessimistic about it, which, now that I think it through, it sort of makes sense. But the point of the matter is, we'll believe it when we see it, because projects have failed in the past. Projects have succeeded in the past. It's all a matter of execution, and talk doesn't really matter. Now, GM has specified that the introduction of the GMC EV Hummer gives birth to the new approach to the first civilian vehicle. And I think the first model was the H1, and it was sold by AM General in 1992, and somewhere between that time period, 1992 and whenever the Hummer was decommissioned, GM decided to buy it because they saw an opportunity there. But yet again, GM has bought a lot of companies such as Saab, and I don't even know, freaking Saturn, Oldsmobile. GM had its spending spree of car companies, and it eventually paid the price for it when '08 happened and everything fell on itself like a deck of cards. Anyhow, the GMC Hummer EV is expected to compete with the electric pickup trucks such as the Tesla Cybertruck, which I've talked about it in great detail in my previous podcast. So if you want to hear my opinions about that vehicle, go ahead and listen to, I believe it was episode 4 and 3 when I was talking about it. But however, it's also competing with the Raven. I'm terrible with names, so forgive me. The Raven 1 RT and the Bollinger B2. Jesus Christ, forgive me. So yeah, it's supposed to compete with those cars, and we'll see how it adds up. They haven't mentioned the price. They only mentioned how much they invested in. So it's very speculative at this point and not really worth going into great detail because they'll probably decommission it off and use the 2.2 billion as a write-off or as a loss. So who knows at this point. But however, in other news, since we're talking about electric vehicles, the Tesla releases the first Model Y. Now, if any of you follow Tesla closely with their gimmicks and their trolling with Elon Musk trolling other companies such as Apple, where that's where Tesla engineers go to die, and a bunch of other comments he has specified with trolling about bankruptcy on April 1st, which I thought was pretty funny, but not a lot of people, especially the people who had shares in the company, didn't consider it funny because they're like pulling their hair, and it's expensive stock. Tesla, I believe, at that time was worth around $300 to $400 a share. Haven't really checked it up yet, probably $500. But Tesla's approach to sort of electric vehicles with their lineups and what they do has character to it. And Elon has specified this before with characterizing, well, the basic characterization of electric vehicles are they're boring, they're not fast, they're not fun. And what I have to give credit for with Tesla is they completely restructured what electric cars should be. And one of the funny parts about Tesla and their trolling culture is all the model lines, so the S, the 3, the X, and the Y spell out sexy. So originally, and I spoke about this on my first episode and second episode, I believe, that the entire Tesla line is supposed to spell out sexy. And the Model E was a trademark of Ford. And if they would use that for one of their cars, meaning Tesla, then Tesla was going to get sued by Ford, which I think is funny on its own because Elon has specified in an interview that they're killing sex, which is funny. So with the Q4 2019 financial results, the automaker also released the start of the Model Y production, which the Model Y, if you've seen it, looks like a smaller version of the Model X. So it looks like what they're trying to do is they're trying to make vehicles for higher class people and other vehicles for lower class people, and each vehicle is sort of like a deviation of itself of I don't know, like lower quality parts, I guess. So that's how you make a cheaper product. So for example, the Model 3 is supposed to be the lower scale version of the Model S, and the Model Y is supposed to be the lower scale version of the Model X. So that's how the lineup goes for Tesla. But for almost a year now, we have seen the Model Y's pre-production prototypes on the public road as a part of Tesla's extensive test program. So this is pretty good at Tesla and shows that they're giving huge caution to their new technologies such as AI, self-driving, and other integrated technologies that are involved to make driving less hazardous and easy. So the vehicle is supposed to appear around, I think you can order one now, I believe. It hasn't specified here, but you can just look on the website and look. But this would be a representation of the major breakthrough in body manufacturing, and the images represent the first visual proof that Tesla is sort of making their production nightmare that they had over the course of their company's history, sort of a relief and a reality that there is such a way to sort of make all these variations of vehicles and whatnot, and it's a step in the right direction. So there's not really that much detail about the vehicle, but what I can tell you is that the range is going to be 315, and we should probably expect it to be all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive, and that's for like people that are in sunny weather where it never snows, such as the West Coast, California. Arizona, Texas, and places that do snow and you have icy conditions and all-wheel drive as you go to. So that's where they're targeting in terms of their customer base. Now in other news, and this is about the Daytona race that happened, and more importantly, it's about the mid-engine Corvette that participated in this race, and it was, the opening of the new era of this Corvette, and especially being mid-engine, this car really had mixed results because it placed in fourth and seventh in its class in the 24-hour Daytona debut last week. And what's even more funny is it's hailed as a poor man's supercar, and the Corvette's sports car has long competed head-to-head on international race circuits with titans such as Porsche and Ferrari. So I think the reason why this mindset is given the Corvette is because anyone can buy it, and the prices are pretty darn cheap for this car, comparatively speaking to what you can also get for this power to weight and all these logistics and power numbers that you receive from this car for only $60,000. So with this Corvette, no one really, from my observation, no one really takes it serious to the extent of a Ferrari or a Lamborghini because it's not as rare. So scarcity is sort of like the huge enemy of Corvette's recognition as sort of a supercar, which is unfortunate, but the truth. But as a result of that, who cares? Because Z06s, especially the C7, the C6, with those generation power performance vehicles, you're getting a bang for your buck. You can spend $20,000, $25,000 at most on these cars, soup them up, and the LS motor, and this is what I have to give the GM, the LS motor is one hell of a motor. It's very reliable in a way of where to extreme extent, if you put bald eagle feathers and gunpowder and oil in the gas tank, the engine will still run. So I'm not saying in a literal sense, of course. I'm just saying that there's a reason why LS swaps are a thing, because it's a cheap motor, and the cheap motor is also reliable. But with this new motor that has, I think, not been out for this new Corvette, we'll see how the reliability goes. But with GM's past history of with their motors, especially with their performance vehicles, they pretty much sweep the competition with who they're competing against, which are usually the Italians and sometimes the Germans, but the Germans' technology is usually generations ahead of these types of motors. But the article specifies that the engine is the biggest difference between this new generation Corvette and the last generation Corvette. And for many hours of computer simulation and on-track testing, nothing can prepare a race team for stresses of full squat 24-hour races. And this is the truth, because the only application that can help you sort of deal with racing in general is actually racing in real life and not really simulation. Simulation, what from my experience, could help you in a way, but the real feel of the wheel, where the car turns and etc., is a completely different experience. And with 24 hours, it's an endurance race, essentially. And that's what it is. And you have various amounts of drivers. I think you have 5 to 7 drivers. I'm not really sure, but they take shifts. And you just go on and on and on. And it's a pretty entertaining race. And it's pretty cool, the cars that they drive. But it's just, like they said before, stresses a full squat 24-hour race. But despite the fourth place loss that the CAR has experienced, there's essentially no comparison with the disaster that happened in the 2016 Daytona 24-hour debut of the Ford GT when the transmission issues dropped both cars out of contention in just hours into the race. So I guess you can look at it that way, that that they didn't default out of the race because of mechanical issues and a bunch of other issues, but the team can be proud, and this is what the article says, the team can be proud of what the car has shown. And it just seems like this is just the start of Corvette, cut them some slack. It's very usual for some vehicles to not be at its top performance, especially on this application, because when you have these cars in these applications, they go through rigorous wear, especially mechanical wear, and it's very hard to diagnose these issues in a cost-effective manner. And the only way to do it is just to actually race it, which you're taking a gamble, but that's the only way to do it. So that's the end of all the relevant news. Now it's time for Song of the Week. Now, I was really considering David Bowie, Space Odyssey, I think it's called, where he's talking about being in space and Major Tom. But in general, I think that song is overplayed, and I think everyone is aware of that song, and it was played in Mr. Deeds with Adam Sandler, I think, where he sings Planet Earth is blue and there's nothing I can do, and plays the guitar and just claps. Like, if anyone is a fan of Adam Sandler's movies, especially his early 2000s and early to late 1990s movies, then you know what I'm talking about. I think it's in Mr. Deeds or Billy Madison, I'm not really sure. But anyway, so the song of the week is called This Must Be the Place by the Talking Heads, and it's a good melody, it's a good positive joy of a song, and possibly I don't know, if you're feeling down, which I wasn't when I was listening to it, you get a sense of, I don't know, enjoying time in a way. I'm not trying to be as philosophical as I did with the Billy Joel Captain Jack thing, because I got some comments saying, dude, that was like fucking deep, like unnecessary. So I'm just gonna cut to the chase with the Talking Heads, positive, foregoing, the whole spiel. So go take a listen to it. I appreciate everyone who has listened to the previous episodes, and especially this episode. Unfortunately, we're not going to have the Dysfunctional Podcast tomorrow because tomorrow is someone's birthday, so it sort of interferes with the schedule that we already have. But anyway, I'll see you next Saturday, and hopefully we can get back to the Dysfunctional Podcast next Sunday.